Chris was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 16, and he went on to become the first NBA basketball player with type 1 diabetes. And in 1994, he and his wife, Chris, started the Chris Dudley Foundation, working to help support youth and youth athletes with type 1 diabetes through summer camps, educational programs, and outreach programs. And then we also have, of course, Casey from DRC. She is the interim executive director for DRC. She's been working there for 4 years, helping them support their mission of connecting donors with early career scientists, enabling them to perform peer-reviewed novel research to prevent and cure type 1 diabetes, which I think as a type 1 diabetic, I can speak for everyone on the call, we think is amazing. And we're so excited to see some of the things that you guys have been putting out into the community. So with that, I will go ahead and let Chris take us away. And if everyone would like to go ahead and switch their view to speaker view, that's really going to allow you to see Chris's presentation and hear his story in the best way.
Thank you, Kelsey. And yeah, happy to tell my story and go from there, and then leave plenty of time. We're both trying to leave plenty of time for questions at the end, so that we definitely think of your questions, and because make sure we hit on everything and answer what is on everybody's mind, what's most important to them. So I guess starting my story was go back to I moved to San Diego from Philadelphia in 6th grade, and then was living in San Diego. I was going to Torrey Pines High School, loving basketball. My dream was to play in the NBA, loved basketball. Wasn't great at it at the time, but this is like 9th grade, 8th, 9th grade. Going into sophomore year, I did not make varsity, was on JV at sophomore year at Torrey, and had just finished the season when was working out, doing stuff after the season, when all of a sudden I got the classic symptoms of diabetes. I was incredibly thirsty, had to go to the bathroom all the time, and really just didn't feel great. My father's brother, so my uncle, had type 1 diabetes. So my father recognized the symptoms. He got something at the pharmacy. I think it was test tape at the time, something you did, kind of a rudimentary test to see, to check blood sugar. And it was sky high, took me to the doctor. And of course, it turned out I had type 1. Going in, I'd heard of diabetes because of my uncle, but I had no idea what it was. And diabetes, more so then, and this was 1981, a long time ago, it had negative connotations as far as quality of life and different things. And so asked the doctor, the first question I asked the doctor was, am I going to live? And I didn't mean, am I going to live tomorrow, next week, that sort of thing, but I meant how long, and what does this mean? Then the second question I asked, which was probably, well, I'm not going to say equally important, obviously, but very important to me, was, can I still play basketball? And I was fortunate. I was fortunate that the doctor at that time said yes, because this was right when the thoughts around diabetes and exercise were evolving. Prior to this time, and even into the late 70s, it was thought that you don't want to exercise heavily, don't do active heavy sports with diabetes, because it wasn't worth the risk of low blood sugars. That was changing, and then there was also coming out, studies were coming out saying that actually activities, being active, was good for your diabetes and good for your control. So I got the green light to keep playing. Worked real hard at it, became a better player, just gradually became a better player. I played JV junior year as well. And then senior year, I played varsity, made all San Diego, had a very good senior year, got recruited to play at Yale, and went on to play 4 years at Yale. And you can slide, Casey, slide to the next slide. 4 years at Yale, and then I got drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that was well, obviously a big deal for me, but it was a big deal with diabetes because nobody had played in the NBA with type 1 diabetes. So they knew about it, but they were nervous about it. And I was able to go ahead and play. And it was very important to me never to miss practices or games because of the diabetes. I felt that I wanted to prove to the team and my teammates that I could play at that level while having diabetes. And I also felt I'll say this in a positive way, a responsibility, but to kids and everybody out there with type 1 diabetes, that I wanted to make sure that that I could show that you could play in the NBA with having it. And it was really I think it was my third year in the league, maybe somewhere in there, that I became much more outspoken about having type 1 diabetes because I was able to play. Had a season where I played all 82 games, didn't miss any, was starting. And I think I and this was my second, third, fourth year in the league with no issues from the diabetes perspective. I felt like I had shown that, yes, someone with diabetes can play in the NBA. So I became much more outspoken about it. Then after I originally played for Cleveland, then played for the Nets for 3 years, became a free agent and signed with Portland Trail Blazers in 1993. That is when Chris and I, my wife's name is Chris also, formed the Chris Dudley Foundation and started the basketball camp for kids with type 1. And I've got here, and you'll see this on the slide, I always ask this question at camp. With campers, we ask trivia questions and just try to be interactive as they're sitting there getting ready to go to dinner and to get to test before they go to dinner. But the trivia is that I will ask, what is the average NBA career for someone with type 1 diabetes? And I'll tell them that I played in the NBA for 16 years. And then Adam Morrison, who came later, he played up at Gonzaga, great player, college player of the year, played with diabetes, and he played in the NBA for 4 years. And so we will say that, all right, so type 1, if you have type 1 diabetes, your average is 16 plus 4 divided by 2. Your average is 10. And the average for everybody else in the NBA, the average career, because there's a lot of turnover towards at the end of the bench, is 3.5 or 3.3 years. So we will say if you have type 1 diabetes, your career should be 3 times as long. Anyway, that's the trivia, and that's what that last bullet point was for. Okay, Casey, next slide, please. Dream big. So one thing we talk about at camp is to dream big, and basically it's not that you have to play in the NBA or you have to do something incredible. It's really that you do whatever it is you want to do, and you can do whatever it is with diabetes. Don't let diabetes stop you from achieving your goals, whether it's playing in the NBA or whatever it may be. And we really emphasize to the kids that you can do whatever it is you want to do in life, provided that, and it is a big provision, that you take care of your diabetes. And so we talk about dreaming big and following your dreams. Next slide, please. So we started, as I said, the foundation in '94. The emphasis for the foundation is awareness, outreach, education. The program that is run continuously since the inception has been the basketball camp, which is up in Vernonia, Oregon, and is for boys and girls with type 1 diabetes, ages 10 through 17. And everybody there has type 1. Next slide. Actually, go back one slide. I will say with the awareness, the bottom left is is in Washington. That's actually Susan Collins that I'm talking to, where we would part of awareness was to lobby for dollars for diabetes, and that is something something we've done throughout the years. I think the middle slide, middle picture is a program that we have providing, we provide test kits, stocks, different things, different diabetes equipment for homeless in Oregon. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so again, we've had kids from all over. It's the only basketball camp in the world that's a week-long overnight camp for kids just for kids with type 1 diabetes. When you're an NBA player, and I had been asked about, hey, you should do a basketball camp during the summer, and I think most players are asked that, and some do, some don't, but do different things. I'd also gotten involved at that time with a Gales Creek up in Oregon, which is a summer camp that's for kids with diabetes, and we came up with the idea of merging them and said, hey, let's do a basketball camp. And it's our medical director will state that our camp is, I don't know, probably making up a number, but 5 times as hard as working the other camp, just because of the activity level that we have. So it's been, and another reason we started the camp was I would always get letters from parents, from kids. What do you eat? What's your game day routine? How do you play basketball at a high level while having diabetes? So thought there would be a real desire, real demand for basketball camp, and it has been. We've had a waiting list every year since inception. We get kids from all over the world, obviously the U.S., but Canada, Turkey, United Emirates, New Zealand. We've had them from everywhere, and as we said, we're staff is probably, we may have, I have to do the numbers again, we have close to as many staffers as we do campers. I mean, we're very, or maybe more, I have to think about that, but with endocrinologists, nursing staff, basketball coaches, trained counselors, night counselors, nutritionists, on and on. Next slide, please. Oh, was that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, how am I doing on time? Oh, just about there. So we've had the camp doing the awareness. Some of the other events that we've done is we did a Pacific Northwest Diabetes Week where we talked about type 1 and type 2. I teamed up with Dominique Wilkins, a Hall of Fame basketball player who has type 2 diabetes, and we worked together to highlight both type 1 and type 2, and we did that at the Rose Garden where the Blazers play up in Oregon. So that was another event we have done, and I know there were some questions that, well, I think we'll get to at the end, kind of what I do personally as far as my routine. And I will tell you that diabetes, one thing I will add before handing it over to Casey, is that it is amazing how the technology has changed from 1981, when I was 16, to where it is today. And back then it was, they didn't even have test kits. Then it was the test kits that take a minute to literally take, now it's 5 seconds. It would take, and forget about the CGM. That wasn't even an idea back then, but take a minute on a bit where you had to do, it felt like a pint of blood on a strip, and felt like it would work half the time and fail half the time. And the insulin was not as good. The insulin has gotten much better. It did not have Humalog at that point. And so it's gradually gotten better and better. And I felt I was the idols I had growing up. And one reason that I wanted to have the camp and be outspoken about having diabetes, it was a big deal for me when I was growing up to know that Bobby Clark, who was a Hall of Fame hockey player for the Philadelphia Flyers, and when I lived in Philly, was a fan, that he was able to play in the NHL with diabetes. To me, that was a big deal. There was also a triathlete in San Diego who was able to run triathletes with diabetes. And there was a baseball player, Ron Santos, who played for the Cubs, who was able to play baseball. And the technology got better over time, but it also showed that you could play sports. And since I've done it. Other guys, as we said, Adam Morrison in the NBA, Gary Hall, Olympics swimmer, on and on. Jay Cutler's played in the NFL. There's just tons of baseball players. It's become more and more common to see professional athletes who have type 1 diabetes. So, and anyway, I'll glad to answer questions. And Casey, you want to hand it over to you and let you have your time.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to share my screen here. Chris, I might even kick you out for a minute, but you can mute yourself. I'll bring you back. All right. Well, here we go. As Kelsey had said, I'm Casey Davis, and I'm the Interim Executive Director with Diabetes Research Connection. And really what I'm hoping to do in this time, because we actually received questions from you all when you RSVP to our event. So we will answer those, and we will answer those based off of what the experts have said. So it's not me. We went to specific individuals on our board who have a background as endocrinologists and researchers and asked your questions. And many of you had questions for Chris. So we will also have time at the end to address those. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. I wanted to just provide a brief overview of Diabetes Research Connection and specifically highlight a couple of really amazing things that are happening this year. So as you can see, I was going to share a video. We were going to do more of a formal presentation, but so many of you already knew about DRC, those who RSVP'd. So I don't want to spend all the time blabbing about that. But I do want to say that as we focus on type 1 diabetes research, as Kelsey described, what makes us different than other organizations that focus on type 1 diabetes research is that we target early career scientists. So of the funding available for type 1 diabetes research, 1% goes to scientists 36 years and younger. So these talented and new researchers could have ideas that lead to major breakthrough, and we hope someday for a cure as well, and they're not being supported. So DRC supports those scientists and their promising research projects. And we go through a scientific review process. We have every individual that we pick the most promising. So they're vetted, and these peer-reviewed projects are what we are so excited to share about. So as we look at this, I'm going to share a couple. This is just a quick overview. If you go to our website, you can actually see all of the projects that we have funded and that we are currently funding. And you can click on them and actually see videos from our researchers. You can see updates, any project updates that they have. And we really want to provide direct access to our researchers, especially those who support them and are excited to hear about what they're doing. So that's another way that we differ. And the other way that I love to share is that 100% of donations that go to science, that go to these research projects, go 100% to the scientists' labs. So that's really exciting to know that you get to see Dr. Ahmed, you see him at the top, watch his video and know that your donation went to advancing this incredible new project. So please feel free, go in, see our website later. We're going to be sending an email after the event that has all of the resources that I referenced, including our website, but you can browse and see really exciting updates of what we do. DRC also likes to share the latest research in type 1 diabetes. So we will also send you a link to sign up for our e-newsletter if you're interested. We also feature it on all of our social media platforms, but we want to make sure that we're constantly connecting our community to what's going on in type 1 diabetes research. So in March, we're launching a campaign to focus on impact. As you know, research can be slow moving. So the impact that we see DRC, it's not DRC individually, but the researchers that we get to support. We have seen them do phenomenal things. So I'm going to highlight a couple things just so you can see from the big picture what we have gotten to see happen since our first project was funded in 2015. So DRC has approximately, we have distributed $1.2 million towards innovative type 1 diabetes research. 32 projects, that's what we have currently funded, and we have many in the pipeline. We have a handful of LOIs, meaning we are vetting, having our 80-person scientific review committee, and so on and so forth, reviewing these applications so that we can pick the most promising research to invest in. So overall, the bigger picture is $8.4 million So that means follow-on funding. So when these scientists develop proof of principle through their DRC funded project, they can go on and receive more funding to advance their ideas to the next level. And we have seen our early career scientists secure $8.4 million in follow-on funding. We have also seen many of these early career scientists advance in their careers. 3 have been published. If you go on our website, you can see a box that says where are they now on many projects, and it will directly link you to their publications. It'll also show labs or where they're professors, but we have also had 3 early career scientists start their own labs, which is really exciting. So one of you had asked before this event, what is an exciting research update that DRC has? Something that we think is huge breakthrough. So this project actually occurred a few years ago, but we have seen amazing things happen since Yo Suzuki at J. Craig Venter Institute, his project, Needles Be Gone, that was his DRC funded project. It was focusing on bacterial cells, so that live naturally in our body, and they may have the ability to function like our insulin producing cells in an immune privileged site. So it's really incredible what he did with this. And I'm going to read a note directly from him that he wanted me to share. But we have now seen him go on to receive follow-on funding for this innovative idea. So I'm going to read what he has to say because he says it way better than I do. Okay, the generous grant from the Diabetes Research Connection enabled the critical first step toward a microbial treatment for diabetes that circumvents the struggle of injected insulin therapy. We reached a milestone to demonstrate deep skin bacteria producing and secreting insulin. Moreover, the knowledge we gained and the materials we generated with the DRC support will strengthen our next efforts, which are now clearly defined because we experienced aspects of the work already. Securing funding for the subsequent work was also an important goal. Regarding this, we are happy to report that our skin bacteria work is part of a project headed by our team member, John Glass, to be funded by the Larry Hill Bloom Foundation. Therefore, our future efforts will become a reality. So it's really incredible to see this DRC funded project years ago go on and receive millions of dollars in follow-on funding. And this idea, this really innovative, creative idea, has now taken off and the research continues. And we would love to continue to share with you the progress of this project. So we're going to jump in now. Again, this is a brief, quick overview of who we are and what we do. We'll be sending all the resources to you all so you can dig in deeper. Lots of you said you already knew who we were. So if you've heard this before, I apologize. So let's jump in now to some of these questions, and we can have Chris come back and answer the questions that you sent in as well. So the questions that I will be asking from you all were answered by these 2 gentlemen. These are gentlemen that are on our board of directors. So Alberto was previously the president and scientific director. Now he serves on our scientific review committee. And then Cece, you can see his bio as well. And he is currently serving as our chair and president. So the first question that we were asked was, how would COVID affect someone with type 1 diabetes? In discussing this with both Cece and Alberto, the truth is that it would affect someone with T1D the same way it would affect anyone else. However, there are some studies that indicate elevated average blood sugar levels in individuals with diabetes is a risk factor for more severe COVID-19 outcomes. DRC has joined, I don't know if you've heard of this resource before. Obviously, many of you have heard of Beyond Type 1, but we have joined their Coronavirus Resource Alliance. And it does, we're going to send that to you as well. It actually has a huge, long, detailed article on this exactly, on concerns about coronavirus and type 1 diabetes and ways to be ahead of it, ways to continue to have your diabetes under control so that if something, heaven forbid, were to happen, that you would be prepared. So we're going to send that out to you because I think that it goes over it step by step. But again, both Alberto and Cece mentioned that it's going to affect you as it could other individuals. It just depends on also underlying conditions. If there's coexisting conditions, they can't really speak to that. That would be on an individual basis. So the other questions that we received, many of them were about COVID, which is completely understandable in this time. Is the COVID-19 vaccination safe for T1Ds? And again, the short answer is yes. But depending on if you have underlying conditions, we would recommend that you consult with your primary physician about receiving it and to express your concerns as well. I know that there are a lot of questions about when type 1s will be able to get their vaccination. Some have, but others have claimed that they tried to, and that type 2 diabetes was receiving preferential treatment and they were confused. There is a resource as well. And this is something that Alberto said. He said, "Don't worry, it's coming soon." I don't know how he knows that or how he could say that, but there is another resource on that coronavirus Beyond Type 1 page that does address this as well, the CDC timing. And so we will be sending that out so you can read it in depth. And then another interesting questions around research, because one question was, what is an exciting research project to follow? And that was Yo Suzuki's through DRC. Another question was, why have many other diseases like cancers been cured and type 1 diabetes has not been cured? And that's a really good question. And I know that so many individuals in the type 1 world have heard a cure is coming in 5 years, and it can be very tiring and exhausting. There is promising research being done every day, but at the same time, this is a really understandable question. So in speaking with Alberto and Cece, they had mentioned that while there are many different types of cancers that have cures, many of them do not. And the other thing to realize about this is that there are about 100 times more financial resources being invested in curing cancer than type 1 diabetes, and a lot more researchers as well. So T1D receives less funding and has less researchers that are dedicated to that right now. This is another reason why DRC exists, to continue to support the exciting research that our scientists do. So with that, I'm going to invite Chris back, and I want to make sure we spend time on these questions. Where did you go, Chris? Okay. We want to have him come back, and he's going to answer these questions specifically around exercise and type 1 diabetes. He's also going to answer some questions around what it was like for him managing his type 1 and working in the NBA. So here we go. Unmuting.
There we go.
There we go. Unmuting him and showing his video.
Let's see.
I hear you, Chris, so I don't see you. Wait.
Oh, okay. It's, let's see. You cannot do it because the host, it's not letting me do my video because it says the host has stopped it.
Oh, shoot.
But
that would be me.
But anyway, until we.
Okay, well, I'll ask you the question and then I'll find a way to get you back. Okay.
Okay.
So the first question is, what foods did you eat and that did you find sustained you or helped you maintain a playable blood glucose range while competing in practices and games?
That's a great question, and that's something that when I said we started the camp foundation in 94, 95, that was a question I would get about all right, what do you eat? What's your game day routine? And so two things for game day, and I'll get to the foods. First thing was that testing. It was so important to know what my blood sugar was, what my body was doing. And we do this at camp. We do this thing where every time I go through my game day routine, get up in the morning, test, eat breakfast, test before I get in the car to drive to practice, test when I get there. And every time I say the word test, the kids keep track. And then at the end of it, for the game day, it was between 14 and 16 times. So for game days, I would have tested, and this was obviously before the CGM. So it was super important to know what my blood sugar is doing. And then as far as foods, what I found was that I tried different things. And, at the time, this is dating myself, but back early 90s, there was the carb loading, and that's what you're supposed to do, which is not great for diabetes. But I found it wasn't great for me overall anyway, for playing. So what I found was the best thing for me was a balanced meal, to definitely have protein. There we go. have protein to tide you over, have carbs as well. And so I would, and every player is different. Some can eat right up to the game, basically. I found that I would, if our game was at 7:30, I would eat lunch around 2:30. I would take a nap before that. And long story, usually, it's late nights after games, traveling. I would take a nap, get up and eat my meal, which I was balanced, so protein and carbs, around 2:30. That was my bigger meal. And then I would have a little snack, something with peanut butter or some kind of protein before going to the arena, usually around 4:35. And then the game would be 7:30. So that was that question. One thing I did, Casey, one thing I did want to talk about, because I know was a question, was what I did to treat my diabetes and kind of the evolution. And I started with pens and needles, and carried a vial in my pocket with a needle and would have to do it that way. And then eventually, for a long time, I did multiple shots throughout the day. I think when I first started, it was 2 shots, one at night, one in the morning. But then I got where I did multiple shots, took the regular and then Humulin before meals. And then I evolved the pump. I retired in 2003. The pumps were coming out at that time, but they were the big old blocks and weren't quite ready for what I thought to be able to play with while being on the pump. But that changed. I went on the pump later after my career, and now I'm on the Omnipod pump. Do the Dexcom for CGM, and I tie them together with what's called the loop. And the loop is something that connects the two and has them talk to each other. And I've been really, really happy with that, really pleased with that, where it helps to have a device that can help navigate and help make corrections. And if you give it the right data, if it receives the right data, it can help regulate your blood sugar. And for years, it was always about the A1C, what's your A1C level? But that was, to me, that was a little bit inexact. In other words, I could have a great A1C, but I might have been 50 at times, too low, and then 200 at other times, too high. But the average was 120, which seemed great. So the A1C obviously is a good metric, but not the best. I think time in time in range. The time in the correct range is the best metric. And for that, I'm trying to shoot for 70% or higher if I can.
Great. Yes, you answered my next question as well. So thank you. As we were going
Good.
back and forth between hosts, I'm sorry. The Zoom technical difficulties, they just never end. Okay, so you talked about the technologies used growing up, and then on some questions around, you might have already answered this because I was changing the host, but it said, do you use a pump? Do you prefer injections? I think you said you're looping. There's just a lot of questions about, and again, this is your opinion and your experience, the benefits or costs, if you will, versus injections and CGMs. There's a lot of individuals that asked us questions who said they're still using injections because they're just not comfortable. So I just didn't know if you had any thoughts on what that's like for you.
Yeah, yes, I do. And I think there's a couple of things. One is I'm a big advocate on the CGM. And to me, that is, if you test, at the time, if you tested even 6 times a day, that's considered pretty good. Maybe 8 is better. But that's 8 pictures versus basically a movie for the whole day. That's 4 slices or 8 slices in time versus being able to, the big thing on the CGM is not just getting the number, but the direction, knowing where it's going. Are you going up? Are you crashing down? If you're CGM and it says 120, but it has 2 arrows pointed down, that's to be prepared that you might have to make a correction. So I'm a big advocate of the CGM. The pump I'm an advocate of as well, but I think to me the CGM is even a bigger deal. I'm on the Omnipod because I had issues I was the infusion sites really irritated my skin. So and the tubing, I had issues with that. So I really liked the Omnipod in that it didn't require the tubing, and I really like the idea of being able to have them talk to each other through the loop. And I think there's going to be, obviously, they're working on it, and eventually it'll just do it directly. But I think technology, it is so much easier to deal with diabetes today than it was 40 years ago, and it's so much easier. And it's certainly than when I played. And then I know I mentioned Ron Santos, who played in the 60s, and they didn't even have test kits back then. And he would tell the story of going to being at bat, and he was an all-star third baseman for the Cubs, being at bat and having double vision and having to guess which ball to hit swing at, and kind of just exaggeration, but it was or I don't know if I mean, I think it was a true story, but it's just the technology has gotten so much better. And for me, the biggest advantage with the loop is night times. Is when you're not, is where it's making corrections at night to get you in a stable area. Because if you think about it, if you sleep, not all of us get 8 hours, but if it is 8 hours, that's a 30-year day. That if you could nail that 8 hours and be in range, that really helps your control.
Mm-hmm. Well, so then really a lot of questions were, they thought that you'd be giving answers on snacks and food based on NBA lifestyle. So there's some questions like, I do some extra exercise. It's not necessarily NBA training. So some questions were today, when you think of, going on a run again, you were answering this in the NBA context. So if you have any insight more or less on what it's like for you now. Some individuals say they have a spoon of peanut butter before they go on a run, or they have this snack that they keep with them. Is there anything like that you have, your go-to tips for if you're exercising today, that you could pass on for any of the maybe non-NBA athletes in our community?
Well, yeah, sure. And I'll start with the more extreme, the more NBA-like activities, more extreme. And I found, because one thing I would get asked is, where do you like your blood sugar? And I would like it more, I would want it a little bit on the higher side, more the 150 to 180 range. I found if I was too low, I would actually go lower. If I was higher, over 200, sometimes because of the adrenaline, I would actually go higher. So everybody's going to be different. That's why it's so important you get to know your body and have a CGM, or if you're testing, test frequently, write it down so you know what your body's doing. As far as recreational, and I'm a recreational athlete now, I try to have some protein or something before I go out to exercise. But the big thing for me, along with this, knowing my blood sugar CGM, is making sure I'm carrying something that I can bring my blood sugar level up. I use goo, which is just little packs. And what I love about these were started by endurance athletes, triathletes, and such. But I love it because, it used to be that you kept a candy bar or something, and then, that would melt or whatever. These are so easy to just throw in your pocket. And in fact, I like to go, I paddle surf, and I'll go out there. I'll have 4 of these in my swimsuit pocket, just so in case I feel like I need, getting low, which has happened, I can rip it open and have it right out in the ocean. So I think it's really important to have something with you that can address a low blood sugar. And occasionally you'll be you might guess wrong. You might take one and you didn't actually need it, but it's actually better to come in and be a little bit high than it is to come in, to get a low blood sugar out in the ocean or out where you can't get help. So be prepared.
Yeah, be prepared. Okay, so we just got a question right now. This is kind of going back to your NBA time. How did your teammates react to your T1D?
That's a great question. And it's even more prevalent now. I mean, can you believe that Dexcom had an ad during the Super Bowl? I mean, it's just like diabetes has gotten and it was a good ad too. It's such great awareness. When I first got diabetes, it wasn't as well known, and there was a lot of misconceptions about it, what it meant. But my teammates were great. they saw I would test in the locker room. They would ask, and most they obviously didn't have it, but most had somebody in their family that more typically was type 2, but at least they had some awareness. So the teammates were awesome. And then the teammates that I got to, that was going out to meals with, they got to know that if I needed a lot, I remember there was one time where getting a little blood sugar, they saw it before I recognized it. So, getting orange juice or whatever. So teammates were awesome.
That's great. Okay, we talked.
And can I just, and I might just, I'm just gonna, this is kind of the coach, coach or parent speaking here, but one thing we talk about at camp is that if it's your friends, make sure they know what to do for you and they know what you have. Because that's so, I always say, put the shoe in the other foot. Wouldn't you want to be able to help your friend if they had something where you could help them? And it's kind of the idea that if anybody's not your friend because you have diabetes, you didn't want them as friends anyway, right? I mean, so really we really tell our kids, campers, to be open about it and let their friends. It's not fair to the friends if they don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. So somebody asked about your time as a teenager, actually, speaking of friends and what it's like. Were you diagnosed? I'm sorry, when were you diagnosed?
16.
Okay, so So as a teenager, how did you stay focused enough to manage your self-care as a T1D? Many teens feel invincible and may ignore care and maintenance when they are in periods of feeling good. So what was your experience like?
Well, I would say, and I didn't like I was shy. I was super shy as a kid. So I didn't like showing that I had diabetes necessarily at that age. So in that regard, I was introverted. So I get that where kids kind of just want to, oh, I feel good. I don't want to deal with it but for me, basketball was good for me. I was highly motivated and I knew I played better. I felt better and was a better basketball player when I had good control. So that really motivated me to stay on top of it. Now, I'm certainly was not perfect. And there were times where, like all of us, you get the why me? Why do I have to deal with this? And the hard part about diabetes is we all know it's 24/7, 365. You can't take the weekend off. And even though we want to, and even though so I think there's two things. One, it's just for kids to realize they're not alone. There's a lot of people out there in same deal that they have, and it makes sense to take care of it. But the other is with parents is there's going to be times where they have their ups and downs because sometimes we've had not teenagers anymore, but we have 3 kids. They're in college now, but no, those years are concentration can be tough, and staying focused can be tough. I just benefited because I was so focused on wanting to be a good basketball player.
So we have a kind of non-related type 1 question, but it's NBA. Who was the hardest person to guard in the NBA for you?
Shaq, because he was so big. Akeem was incredible. Akeem, I played a great era for centers. David Robinson, Akeem, Patrick Ewing, Robert Parrish. I mean, they're just all Hall of Fame players that would guard night in, night out. Probably the toughest though was Shaq, just because physically he was so big. I'm 6'10", 260. He's 7'1". He was 7'1", 310 or something. So, or 7'2". He had 3 or 4 inches on me and 50 pounds. And there were other guys that were big, but he could actually move too. So he was physically he was a dominant player. So he was the toughest physically. Karl Malone, when I had the guards, power forwards, was the toughest as far as he would just, for those who are fans, remember, he would just get out and run. So that was hard, just keeping up with him. And Akeem, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson were incredibly tough guards as well.
Yeah.
Tough players to guard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is also kind of steering into a different direction. We have actually an individual from the AMCR Institute who is talking about partnership with Chris Dudley Foundation, incredible things. So we'll have to connect you with them.
Right.
And they were also mentioning, this is just for everybody else, public service announcement that says in San Diego, parents and caregivers of type 1 diabetic kids can schedule vaccinations with a written confirmation done by their endocrinologists. So thank you. She's saying our superstations support those efforts. So that is very helpful.
Yeah.
But the question that she was asking specifically was, did you ever participate in type 1 diabetes clinical studies to benefit from being exposed early on to future new T1D technology and innovative treatments? So basically, have you ever been involved in any clinical studies, or is that something you'd consider?
It's definitely something I would consider. I didn't do it during my career. I would certainly be open to it though. And I know out at our camp, in fact, we were, before COVID hit, we were looking to have a study up at camp for the closed loop system to see how campers did it. Because one thing that's happening in the closed loop is that what's been done to date is more in sedentary, I can't speak conditions, where not quite the activity level we have. Like I said earlier, our campus has such a high level of activity, and then it's, you're out on that blacktop and it's 90 degrees. You can imagine how you're burning through carbs, and what that can do to blood sugar is how the loop would handle that. So I would certainly be open to being a part of any, because we all want the same thing, which is why I'm such a huge fan of DRC, which is to come up in new technology and battling this disease that we're all dealing with.
Okay, so we have another question. Can you address your academic load while at Yale while having type 1 diabetes? Were you allowed certain leniency if blood glucose was too high or too low?
No. So, I mean, maybe I could have, but at the time it was, it was no leniency for being a basketball player, no leniency for being that. I would say this, while I was at Yale, there was a nurse there who was like a second mother to me, who was so awesome helping me, because it was hard playing, especially at that time, playing college sports. At that time was not easy, and she was so awesome in helping take care of me. With the academics, I think, if I had a low during a test, I think I could have probably gotten excused for it. But I would hope so, and I would think today that you'd be able to.
Okay, so your last question is actually from me. In talking to so many individuals during COVID and no real ending date in sight, what have you found is helpful for you for mental health and physical health and self-care with type 1 diabetes? What are a few tips that you give our community?
Well, one is fresh air. I mean, it's like, it was got to get outside, and I think we're so fortunate in being in San Diego, and going down to the ocean. There's something that was, for me, it was sanity, was being able to get out on the water, get on the ocean. So wherever it may be, whether it's going for a walk or some space where you can get some fresh air and keep, to me, the activity is important. It doesn't have to be that you have to, it's got to be extreme workout. It can be a walk, but I think that's for your health, but also for your sanity. So fresh air activity. As far as the diabetes side, to me, it was just really just continuing, even with COVID, not letting COVID stop you from staying on top and staying time in range and that sort of thing, staying on top of your diabetes, not letting it. And again, that gets back to mental. We know the physical of COVID. We know that we're masked up, 6 feet apart, wash your hands. We know what we're supposed to do physically, but mentally is where I really feel bad for, especially for kids who haven't been able to go to school, who are missing activities. As I said, we have 3 kids, and one of ours was supposed to be playing basketball freshman year, and it wasn't happening. High schools here in San Diego aren't sure if they're gonna have a basketball season or not. So it's tough mentally, and I think that's one thing for parents, is just understand that and to help them uh, mentally as well. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have seen a lot of those in our community talk about mental health and how that also affects their, blood sugar levels and things like that, trying to keep that in control. So,
And I might add to that, because mental health in there, and I forget I forget what the ratio is, but there is a higher percentage with type 1 diabetes of depression.
mhm.
I don't know. I don't remember why, or I don't know what the link is. But I do think it's important. I talked about, fresh air activity, but it's also one thing that's been so awesome for our camp is that kids feel isolated, feel alone. I know I did. And when I was in high school, I didn't know anybody that had diabetes. I don't know that I did maybe one person in college. And you can feel it can be tough to go through alone. And that's what our camp has been so awesome, is that you have all these kids that have type 1. They all have something in common. They all like basketball, at least to some level. And they stay in touch all year long. And they're a great resource for each other. And we hear that at the end of when we come back at camp, and that we have activities where they talk about what their year was like, and they'll talk about having some dark days and really battling with depression, or battling with diabetes because they're having issues at school, somebody's made fun of them or whatever, but reaching out to other kids, with realizing there's so many other people, or in this case kids, who are dealing with the same issue, walking in the same shoes, can be so helpful. And just to be able to share that, really a support group, I think can be very, very important.
Yeah, that's so great. I love what your camp's doing. Well, I'm going to invite Kelsey back. While I'm inviting her back, Chris, if you have anything you'd like to say, any parting thoughts or last words, please feel free to do so.
It just that this has been a tough year. I guess we're kind of coming up on year anniversary of COVID. We're all in this together. Hang in there. And I love that. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of DRC. Love what you guys are doing, and love that you're supporting the startups of research, and just that we're all in this together. And it's a great big community out there. I love that somebody was reaching out to team up, and that's what we're all about, is how do we help each other in dealing with diabetes? How do we get through this, support each other, help each other, and make it better for our kids and all of us.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Chris took the words right out of my mouth. We're all one big T1D community, and it's just so great to be able to partner with DRC and just meet more people and hear you guys' stories and your questions. There were some awesome questions in there, so thank you so much for participating. DRC will be sending out an email tomorrow, I believe, with a link to some of the resources that were talked about on this call. One being that Beyond Type 1 COVID resource. I've probably spent too much time myself on that page. It's really just excellent and answers a lot of burning questions. So feel free to check that out. And they will also include links to their website, social media, our website, social media. So feel free to come check us all out. Feel free to ask any other questions through our social media. We love to answer questions through there and get people connected to the resources that they need. And we just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to working and connecting with all of you in the future. And thank you, Casey and Chris, for sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.